Phew.
Phew.
I'm happy to be here with Ra-kalam. Good. Yeah. I'm going to let him speak on his timeline to, let's say, this process from a musical perspective first, and then whatever else comes with that, we'll discuss it. I'd be happy to share that with everyone.
Right. Well, I think maybe the beginnings of what brought me to Bhapu ultimately was hearing a concert when I was, if I remember, about 12 years old. It was either 1960 or maybe 61. And it was either Town Hall or Carnegie Hall, I believe, but I'm not sure. It was the Thelonious Monk's group, Sonny Rollins' group, and John Coltrane's group. And of course, I remember enjoying all the music because they're all great players. But when I heard Coltrane's music, it had a profoundly different effect on me. I would say more like a life-changing effect. And I'm sure at that age I didn't have the awareness or the intelligence to understand what it was, but in retrospect, I think we could say that there was a spiritual quality to Coltrane's music that was not purely musical. It was highly musical, but really maybe not coming from a purely musical perspective. And when I heard it, I knew that that was something that I was needing, looking for. It was very important to me. And, it was many years later that in searching for something that would feel something like that, fate brought me to Tisziji. It was a friend of mine, John Walsh, who we call Satadiek, who said something to me like, "Whoa, you like Coltrane? You should hear this guitar player." And not only that, but he's a guru of a sort too. I said, "Oh, okay, well, great." And I remember the first time I heard Tisziji, I knew. There was no doubt. I mean, something, just the floodgates opened. The light came in, and I knew that, nothing would ever be the same. And I said something then that I don't remember. I'm sure I've never said to any other musician, too, something like I said, or any other being. I don't want to even call Tisziji a musician. Too limiting a term. But I said something to the effect of, if you ever want me to play or need me to play with you, you tell me and I'll be there. Doesn't matter if it pays money, no money, if I have to pay money, if it could be in Alaska, anywhere. I'll be there because I got so much nourishment from the experience. It meant that much to me. And, that was definitely a turning point. And there was a lot of things about that original meeting that were, very striking. Well, one thing was, it was the first time I saw Rebizar, who was Tisziji son, Rebizar, who was 1 year old at the time, or roughly, and suffering from cerebral palsy and various other things. So the kid was in a lot of pain. As I observed, that's a disease that tightens you up. You can't really stretch. So very painful. But I noticed right away that as soon as we started to play, the boy would just go into like complete alpha state. He would look like how a baby looks when there's nursing on the titty, that kind of blissed out look. And I said, this music, which was extremely intense, is not the kind of thing usually you would play for a 1 year old, was his mother's milk. And it's remained that way to this day. Reb is, 35 now or something, and he still has that effect on him, which was a beautiful thing to see. There was a lot of other things as I got closer. Tisziji came back for other meetings that I observed. At the time, I don't think you were eating very much, if at all, or sleeping very much at all. But I'd met people who didn't sleep much, but they were usually hyper. They were, because they were on drugs or taking speed or something. There was none of that quality with Tisziji. It was just absolutely relaxed, as you know, as always has been, but precise, super sharp, and seemingly never got tired. It didn't seem to need food in the way other people did. I used to think it was some form of photosynthesis, like a plant. Just give it a little sun and a little water, and it's good. But these were indications early on that it was not a usual or normal average being. There was many. I mean, I'd have to have been kind of a dummy not to notice that this was a different kind of being, different kind of human, a master. And so I knew right from the get-go. And Tisziji pointed out, which I did not know or did not remember, that he had met me earlier, or maybe not met, but he had seen me earlier, around 66 maybe, when I was playing at the Village Vanguard with Larry Coryell. So there was a connection that, came to an actual meeting about 14 years later. But I knew it, in retrospect, it had to happen. And that first time, like I say, when I heard Coltrane live, that set something in motion for me. And there's a quality that I still would like to see in music, that I have a need for it. If I need music at all, it's for that quality, that spiritual quality or healing quality. And Tisziji, to me, has it even way stronger than I hear it in Coltrane. It's let's say, a purer form. I'm not saying better musician necessarily, because Train was a music fanatic, virtuoso, whatever, but in terms of that quality that I'm looking for, the cry, the bleeding, the melting heart for all of humanity, it's the strongest I've ever heard in any other music I get from Tisziji. And it's still it's the most important thing for me. And I would say my main reason for coming to Earth, when I think about it, and I've heard these new recordings that have come out, well, they're not new, but they're new for the world, the Omega Nebula and Parasangati. And when I hear that stuff, I said, my little bit of part of whatever I was able to add, that's the reason. I think that's why I came to Earth. That's the main reason, to help in this work a little any way I can.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you've done a great job. And I think that the important thing to share with the people is that I haven't made music the thing, the main thing. I have made spirit the main thing. And I think I've made it the main thing because I started out, say by the grace of the forces, as an infant, extending from my father's genes, who was a drummer, professional drummer. And I caught wind of that and had that in my life stream early enough to make that the dominant force, more so. And we're talking now about the drums. That's not really about music, not really about religion, but really about the nature of the universe. I'm talking about primordial origins beyond the blood. We're talking then relating to or connecting with the etheric life stream of the universe, cosmic form of the universe. And so having that as an origin is something you have to work with. You have to try and understand it and make it work for you in your lifetime, because any one of these things that we're talking about to the extreme can take a person out. Music takes people out. Drums take people out. Life experiences take people out. And this is really about bringing people back to an original kind of sense of connectedness, which is not about social practice particularly. It's about going back to birth and connecting once again with a certain kind of cosmic field relative to the birth stream, birth cycle, and birthing to the degree where we are connecting with the creative, and I'm saying this carefully, a certain quality of creative energy that is continual birth and rebirth, continual death, like continuous but also simultaneous at the same time. And so this is part of the process here that I have been able to verbalize and scripturalize and maybe even demonstrate to the people, actually actualize to the musicians that this is something that it would be considered a yogic practice, maybe a mystical practice to some degree, because I'm just as in the dark and the light as much as anybody else as to why it happens, the way it happens, but I'm okay with it. So the important thing is to be okay with the, let's say, the phenomena of coincidence. Be okay with it, that this is created and part of the creative process for the sake of other peeps. And then what I'm talking about here is a conjunctive, a psychically conjunctive sort of coincidental process that occurs so that the right people show up at the right time to get the right job done. And this is part of it. This is part of, let's say, our timing on Earth. But if you clear the slate for the spirit to be, like, say, the main thing, then I think you have a different kind of life stream, a different kind of process in terms of what this means and how it shows up. When you're talking about this quality, the quality that I would say is also a quality of praying for the benefit of other peeps, but we can't say it's a religious type thing in a manner of speaking relative to any particular religion, but we can say it's a native thing relative to the nature of the heart. So what you're talking about also in terms of crying is a native of the heart, and that is obvious and manifesting through my music, if we can call it that, and not just my guitar playing, but my origins as a voice in the universe from the beginning, which I can say born of the basis of the cosmic intelligence that time manifests as cosmic intelligence. And that means in terms of creating space as part of our healing, and then using time as part of our recreation. If people can see that far, that is to say, you're being born not only to remain as a life form, but you're being born as an opportunity on Earth as well as anywhere else to recreate as you go along. Recreate. Allow the forces of recreation to come into your life, let's say, presence, and change and modify and maybe improve and transcend accordingly. So this is part of what is built into what I do when I play, which is part of the way I breathe the process. And I think that's, despite the forms we use, an aspect that may be reminiscent with what you were saying, you heard earlier in your life. But this is something that doesn't have a beginning, so you need to connect with what it is, so that it's a way of life rather than, a particular reference in time. But that's where you first heard it, because it is very likely that that's what was being brought to the stage in the case of the music you heard in the beginning. In his music, these ideas, these forces, because I would venture to say, because of what I heard, that he was a certain type of yogi.
Yeah.
I would say jazz yogi. I'm not going to go that far. I think he was transcending the forms, the formal forms, the ritual forms of jazz in a sense, and going beyond that into the fire. See, it's coming from the fire, and I've called it the burn, where he was experiencing the burn, but he was never really pleased with whatever forms he was playing. So he had to go beyond that. So we see the process of what I'm talking about in terms of burn active and alive, and what was going on at that particular time. And what I don't see going on in this time, which makes what I'm doing at least that much more important to me, because I feel that it's a form of spiritual food, spiritual nourishment. Transcension is a way of life, self-renewing on a moment-to-moment basis. It's not like just a musical form. It has nothing to do with the music form. Yeah. Or genre. Particularly, it's not about genre. This is something where we can imagine folk musicians throughout the world being in tune with this, native musicians, as part of what they have had to do to reinvigorate themselves. So you're playing, but you need to revitalize yourself at the same time. You can't just play and do yourself in. You can't play and allow life circumstances and certain kind of things that you do, bad habits, kill your balancing. See, so we're here to experience life, play great music if we can do that, and appreciate great music, but we also need to turn to a deeper part of the super consciousness as well as the deeper cosmic unconsciousness. We need to include these in our so-called self-consciousness, otherwise we're not getting what we're here as spirit souls to get.
Yeah, well, well, after now, knowing Tisziji for whatever it is, 35 years or so, I've observed close up that the way he lives is precisely the way he plays. And having been around the world of musicians, and fortunate to be around some really excellent, great musicians, I know that many of them have all kinds of bad habits. They needed to get high to play. They into drugs, into drinking. The male musician, many of them were womanizers to an unhealthy degree, and treated women badly, and all this kind of behavior. And many within that world would say, well, we need that to do that. That's what that feeds our art or something.
Yeah, I want to add right at this point, because we're also having a conversation. We're conditioned to need that, see. That means we've been told, and we have the habit of needing that. But you don't know that you really need it until you can get beyond that and give it up and see if you need that. See, this is a conversation I've had with many musicians in back rooms. I've even gone as far as saying, well, guys, this is great, we're playing this, but why are you suffering so much? If this is that great, in the way that I know greatness, it means healing, then you should be playing stuff which heals you and frees you from what ails you, frees you from what you suffer. And so then I think we're talking now about the need for this other kind of music. Let's call it a yogic stream of music, where there's a sense of communion right from the beginning, not just about pride, not just about familiarity and ancestry. We're not here to be that. That's where we come from. We don't have to be that. We need to be beyond that, because we're talking about having birth as a seed sprouting out, not just to be coming back to that and being stuck close to home. That's a form of cocoonism, see. And we don't need cocoonism as far as that goes. We don't need to be enslaved in any kind of cocoonery. We need to expand into the universe and be radiant like the sun. Go out as far as you can, because that's our spiritual nature. It's infinite light. So once we start to bring that concept into what it is, then we have to own up to that if we're spirits of light or spirits of darkness and subject to the forces of gravity. You choose. I've already chosen. I don't have a choice. It's been chosen for me. See, it's about radiance, in this case, relative to infinite lightness, rather than stepping out of the cocoon just a little bit and, being more or less limited, see, by culture and habit to saying, well, no, the cocoon is good because that's what I'm familiar with. See, the woman is good. The body of the woman is better than the woman and Mother Nature inside me. That's something that needs to be looked at more carefully. We are made whole, male and female. We are made complete. Once you are born, you are made complete. You have to get to where that is realized in your own case. So you need to know you're already complete, that you're already on the spiritual path at a certain level, and only here for mastery. Getting it done and putting it behind you so you move on to higher levels of realization that are initially unfamiliar to you, and something you have to get used to is, as adapting to the ocean again, where we basically may have come out of the ocean in the water field, but you have to readapt yourself. So we're talking about adapting ourselves to the higher potential, which is not necessarily talked about or made as important as just being an artist, an entertainer. That's made ultimately important. That's it. That's all you're about, that's all you're worth to peeps, and that's all you have. That is a myth. That's a myth we have to transcend. We have to get beyond that myth, because we are not then true to our infiniteness, see, our spirituality. And it's up to us to choose to go, that is, defy the culturing that tells us different, and get in tune with the peeps who have actualized it to any degree. And you're being drawn to that earlier form of cosmic music and coming here. This is like finishing the workup. This is finish it up. That's all this is about. See, completion. Not just, let's say, creation. See, creating change. Starting something in a certain way. No, we have to complete it. We're here to complete the cycle of creation. That means we're here to die and be reborn while we're here, living at the same time. So you have it all happening here. Dying, as the ancient tradition would say, daily. Dying momentarily. Dying with every thought. Dying with every word, every impulse. Dying and being reborn in the fire of transformation. And people don't have that as a basis for their existence, but look around you, look inside you. It is the way it is. And that's what certain musicians, I'm hoping, certain musicians carry that with them as yogis, which is what music is ultimately for. Communion, divine communion, so that once you get to that level, everything is what it is. Because what it is originally, then everything is part of what it is. It's not outside you any more than it's inside you, having realized what you are inside to be equal to what is outside.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And this is a basic practice that has nothing to do with what you're doing. That is, nothing that you're doing is more important than your breathing resonance with the universe. And that's yogic practice, perhaps meditation practice, but that's not a cultural thing. That's human being at its best. Human beingness. And that's what the nature of this heart fire sound is that I brought into the field and described in certain terms, which is not against other forms of music. It just stands apart from other forms of music as any kind of cultural prison or any kind of cocoonery. See? It's not about a cocoon. We have to unfold outside of the cocoon of, let's say, the solar system. And we're trying to do that as well. But the idea is not to be going out there more than going inside out. It's got to be inside out, not outside and then in. Say, oh, because we saw it out there, then it's real. Not scientific materialism at its best and at its worst. You have to see it inside first, because a lot of what's been going on out here in the past several hundred years is discovering what the ancients always knew. Ancients already knew without the technology, and they're seeing that more in terms of these history programs, going back to study native stuff where they built these pyramids, and they built this, they built that. And we can't even do that today with the technology we have. Well, obviously somebody was going inside somewhere. Somebody was tapping into our potential somehow, whether it's through extraterrestrial influence, because we are extraterrestrials. All of us are extraterrestrials. See, gravitated here because we have a sentence. We have a life sentence here. We've been marooned here. Right? This is what our payment is here. This is like, this is it. Right? Well, it is worse. It's death here too. Right, and that's what I'm saying. It's a purgatory.
Might be getting worse.
Yeah, it'll get worse, but it's also getting better.
Yeah.
See, we're talking about spirit changes. You have mind changes, you have heart changes, you got earth changes. Earth changes are relative to the law of gravity. And we're talking about our nature, real nature, because we came into the body and we're going out the body. It's spiritual in nature. It's originally and always then. If it's originally, then it's always that. When are we going to act like that and reap the rewards of that? And why should music prevent you from being that? Why should business prevent you from being that? Why should anything prevent you from being more of that than not? Okay. Sure.
Sure.
Thank you. So we talked about the cosmic implications of what it is, but we now have to get back to the source of what it is, and we're talking about heart practice. That was touched upon before in a maze of sort of like cosmic considerations. But simply heart practice. See, people, be true to that. See, heart practice. Be true to the way of compassion. Okay, kindness, that's part of what's happening here. It's not spiritual mysticism at the expense of any kind of kindness. Ra-kalam has been here seeing me in the service of other peeps, day in, day out, in public, in my home here, as a way of life, being in the service. Heart first, seeing me do that and be that to other peeps. Everyone gets a fair hearing here, because not everyone has the advantage of my history, my culture, in terms of a certain kind of, I guess you might say, basis, native basis of wisdom. Not everybody's born with that, so it's not as strong in everybody's case. So I have to use what this is to help others if they need to hear it in these terms. It's not what I want, it's just the way the bodies and mind are configured to be of functional service to other peeps that way. I don't care if peeps agree with my language or agree with the music. All of this is nonsense. Doesn't matter what anybody disagrees with or likes or prefers. No, this is designed, as my Aunt Gracie told me when I was very young. She said, your purpose here is then to be a channel of something for peeps, and there's nothing anybody can do against it, and there's nothing anybody can do for it. It just is what it is. It's a power unto itself. And I've learned to find that to be the truth of what it is. See? But it's got to be hard first. And I learned some of these lessons from my mother, from my grandfather, my father who passed on early, bless his spirit. My grandfather, who's also passed, but he had a very open policy, and he was an atheist, and he said he would keep the doors open because his house was your house. He said if you needed to come in, and he had nothing. He was, he's not a wealthy person. He was wealthy in mind and heart, but he may not have been wealthy materially. So he may have had a few pickles and a few cans of beer in the refrigerator, but you were welcome. You were welcome to his pickles and his beers. Right? Not to mention his snakes and his rats.
Oh, right. Was that Carlos?
That's Carlos. Sounds a little bit like Boris Karloff. Yeah, so he was an eccentric, but he was a beautiful person, and his heart was where it needed to be. Again, heart first. Doesn't matter if you're crazy or whatever. Make it heart first, so that you can relate to peeps. Like when I lived on 3rd Street, Manhattan, right across the street from the soup kitchen. And I met, we had dead bodies on the street, which is really pathetic and very, very sad. But I met lawyers, I met people of high status who had lost the path, who lost their lives to alcohol. And we'd have these conversations, and if you see the condition they were in, you say, I'm having an intelligent conversation with this person here who knows much more about this than I do. In a sense, these are high-minded people in really wretched conditions. Mm-hmm. Well, what's that say? You can't judge a book by its cover. What are you going to do? Pass up on this intelligence, this father of somebody, this brother of somebody, because he doesn't keep up with appearances? Mm. See, that's not the spiritual. The spiritual path is penetrating beyond appearances into the soul of the matter. So I had friends there who made, I would see them dead on the street at sometimes. Not all, many. But yeah, a few of them didn't make it, or under cars. See, so here we're talking about a life that is really sensing and feeling the truth of existence as suffering. It is about suffering. Not everybody makes it, with flying colors from point A to point C. Mm-hmm. See? And so what do? See, we need to be vulnerable to these peeps. I have been, and I play this way. Because I have no pretense about being lucky or being better than anybody else, because in a split second we can be taken out of our game, because it's not our game.
Right.
It's not your body, it's not your mind, you borrowed it, so it's not yours, see? Mm. So you say you own it, you can say it is, but it's not yours. Now going back briefly to the concept on the musicians, and what they're doing. See, they are owned by the body, they don't own the body, and they're being used by the body. See, so let's say in terms of mastery, well, if we can use this kind of image, say, well, the master can get drunk, as we never seen masters get drunk, and then they can stop, boom, do it, and release it. Say, oh yeah, I was at the party last night, but not today, we've got to get to work. Mm-hmm. Master can do that. Ordinary person can't do that easily. They have the ability, the potential to do that, but they don't do that. They become victimized by their programming, by their bad habits. That means river of blood karma, what they're really owned by, that uses them. And I said, I have a difference of opinion about that. Say, oh, well, because it shows up in the body, it's natural, it's this, that. I know what shows up in the body is your enemy. Mm-hmm. What shows up in the heart is your friend.
Wow.
Okay, may the blessings be you.
Thank you.